Ulrika Jonsson has lived her life in the spotlight, a television icon and author. But more recently, she made headlines earlier this year as she wrote a candid essay on her decision to give up alcohol after years of abuse. In this podcast exclusive, Ulrika opens up about her journey to sobriety, what led her there, and the hard truths that she discovered in the year since she's been sober. If you haven't already, then please take a moment to subscribe to the show wherever you are. Your support and joining our Untapped community helps the show grow, and you'll be the first to hear about the incredible guests that we have lined up. And you can follow along with me as I begin training for my 7-in-7 world record attempts later this year. Now let's welcome Ulrika Jonsson. I'd love to tell you kind of why we're here. I read your essay when the news came out that you had decided to be sober and that you were a year sober. And what you wrote really resonated with me. I've had plenty of struggle with alcohol and, you know, long periods of abstinence and a lot of learning. And just even specific examples of what you were talking about and how it's affected your life. The first thing I did was send the article to my team here, and I just said, this is incredible. And I'd love to ask you how it came about. You wrote in your essay that you were hungover again, you used the word, and you were wrapped up in a blanket, and you said, you fired off a text message to one of your friends just saying, you know, I just can't do this anymore. What was different about that time?
Well, that's the interesting question. I actually don't really know what was different about the 5th of June last year. I would always, whenever I had a hangover, which was becoming every day, force myself through and punish myself by doing physical things like out in the garden, working hard. There was no such thing as kind of resting and recuperating. It was almost like some sort of punishment. But after I'd done that, I sat down on the sofa and I don't know what it was. I mean, I knew there was a problem, but I didn't want to give up. I guess I didn't want to give up. And
the alcohol, you mean?
I didn't want to give up the alcohol. Because I guess I knew deep inside that if I was going to give up, it wouldn't be a case of cutting down or giving up for a short period of time. There was an issue there that needed to be addressed, and I didn't want to address it. And honestly, when I look back at that day then, there was something. Now, of course, I believe it was my higher power that sort of helped me along, helped me send that message to a friend who was already, I think, 5 years sober. So I knew that she was familiar, and I knew she knew that I had a problem too. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't think beyond that text. It was just, that was it. And then I literally just kind of hoped that something would happen.
And did she help?
Yeah, she basically said to me, why don't you hop on a support group meeting tonight? And I was horrified. Like, no. Like, I didn't say no, of course, but she said, there's one that's, starts at 9 o'clock. Well, I'm in bed by 8:30, so that would be my excuse. And she said, well, I'll find you an earlier one. And I did. I mean, I actually did.
It's very shocking even to oneself, isn't it, that moment? I had the same thing. I reached out to somebody that I don't really know, but a famous person.
Right.
I won't name them because they may not wish to be named, no. but my agent was managing a very famous person who was sober, and she got me his number. I called him, and he said exactly the same thing. You need to get yourself to a men's meeting today. And I just, same as you, I was just like, what's the rush? I'm not going to do it today. Like, I've taken this step to say I'm going to sort myself out. I don't have time to go to today. And then and he said you're making excuses. If you've got kids, get yourself a babysitter. If you've got a meeting, cancel the meeting. Get to this meeting. You absolutely must attend the meeting. If you're serious about changing your life, you've got to get to this meeting. And I went to the meeting, and it was the Kilburn's men's meeting, and it was like I felt like I didn't really belong there.
Did you walk in person? Did you go in person?
Yeah, right. I went in person. But it was different people's problems are all I guess relative. But I certainly felt like I was maybe fresher in the scale of what was going wrong with there were people there who were, I think, high on drugs at the time and very suicidal, and it was very eye opening for me, which I suppose was the point of the meeting. And I sat down next to this guy, and he looks at me and he goes, "You look all right," and I thought, okay, well, thanks. And I actually felt out of place because I was deeply ashamed of my drinking and my behavior, which had completely got out of control. But I was a little bit kind of like, oh wow, I'm sure I could maybe find a more appropriate meeting. And the guy at the end was like, listen, you probably can find a more appropriate meeting, but you're not a million miles from this. And if you are concerned about what you're seeing here, you should be, because you're a year away from this. If you carry on, you'll lose your wife, you'll lose your kids, you'll lose your job, your family will move away from you potentially. And, you never know where you'll end up. And, and it was just a bit of a kind of like, it was a real wake up call for me to kind of understand that, of course, they didn't all start there. No. Like that was a journey, or like a particularly turbulent journey for them to get to there. And as I said, it's all relative, but how did it feel accepting that you have a problem in the first place, I suppose? Because I think that's a very difficult thing for lots of people. And it's particularly hard to tell people. Like it has to come from within. It came from within you.
Yeah.
So you sent the message saying, I can't do this anymore. And that was essentially asking for help. But, whenever you try and do the right thing, even with a friend or even a family member, and say, I think that the drinking might be a bit out of control, it's almost always met with extreme stubbornness and resentment almost for even asking the question. So how did that feel freeing to you?
Nearly all of my drinking took place at home when I was on my own. So to that end, I felt like it really was nobody's business. And I didn't think about it affecting anyone else, because I was, I kept my house was impeccable. It was on top of everything, apart from not remembering a lot of things. But so for me, it was very much like, and then the whole justification thing of it's not every day. Again, looking around, my house, which is beautiful and maintained and whatever else, there's not a problem here. But, when the drinking started earlier in the day and I found myself sort of kneeling into the cupboard under the stairs where I kept my rum and just necking the rum from the bottle, I would say to myself, and part of it was almost jokingly, like, look at you, that was the voice in my head, look at you, look what's become of you. And the other one was, there's a problem here. But that I would drink on that because there was a problem, then I'd have to drink on that to kill those feelings. And it was just to keep me, I just felt like I was quite a lovely drunk, which you do, because that's how it made me feel. I mean, I was drinking I had, very, very sort of punishing anxiety. And I had one personal issue that had been ongoing for years in my life that I've been trying to resolve and not being able to, and it just refused to go away, and it was going to result in some major changes in my life, and I just couldn't see a way out. And so this was my solution. And it was, drink became my friend.
When you were on your knees in the cupboard drinking the rum,
it sounds so
no, but
attractive.
I don't want to kind of keep saying that we have similar experiences, but I can absolutely relate to what you're saying. For me, that was because there were other people in the house.
Right.
Were there people in the house for you?
Oh, sometimes, yeah. I mean, now, these are things that I would, because I only had or have my now 17-year-old son living at home. All the others had moved out. And so, when I used to drink, I guess what you would call normally, my drink of rum and mixer would stand on the side in the kitchen. But when the drinking increased, my smartness increased as well. And so I would just put the mixer in a glass, and I'd just go nobody. I don't know if anybody knows this. Nobody. And then I would go and just neck neat rum from the bottle. So that if my son, for any reason, this is awful, and he may be hearing this for the first time if he listens to this podcast, if he for whatever reason was checking if I was drinking, he would drink the mixer glass and go, oh, there's no alcohol in that.
Yeah.
And I'd feel like he wouldn't know that I was,
Yeah. Rum as well.
I know, I'm pretty, it's pretty hardcore. And I think that's the other thing is that, people justify that their drinking's okay because they're just drinking rosé or they're just drinking this or whatever else. But, it's the reasons why we drink, really. That's the problem.
We would have our bottles kind of downstairs, and it's same as you, when my drinking started to creep into the earlier hours of the day, I would just trot down the stairs, neck a double shot of whatever, put it back, come back upstairs like nothing's happened.
Yeah.
I would use vodka because there's no smell.
No smell.
And, and if anybody did say, have you had a drink today? Because it's kind of, you can sort of tell, I suppose, if you're attuned to it, I'd literally, you just lie. The go-to to me was to lie.
Did you get defensive ever?
Sometimes. Ordinarily, I'd just brush it off and just say, no, why would you think that?
You're putting it back on there.
Yeah, but you're gaslighting the person essentially, and it's kind of, I don't love that word because I think it's misused from time to time. But that is pretty, that kind of defines, when you're getting caught for something and then you lie about it and make them feel odd for asking the question. I think that's the literal definition of gaslighting. It's just not a nice place to be. For me, it was the shame, the similarity with the staircase. Is we also have a cupboard upstairs, and I'd open the door to the drinks cabinet and like have a quick shot and then shut the door. And even if there was somebody else in the house, they'd be like, what were you doing there? And I was like, oh, nothing, I'm just looking for something, type of thing. Like, just like thinking you're being smart when actually you've just taken a bottle out of the cabinet, had a clean shot of the bottle, but I would have thought it's clear what you're doing, right? What are you looking for in the drinks cabinet? You think you're being smart.
I made sure there was lots of other very important things in that cupboard. So,
there
genuinely was DIY, keys, exactly, kitchen rock, spare, whatever. My teenage son, certainly, he wasn't interested in my every move. He's busy gaming or whatever else. So it was perfect for me. But there were times as well where, I haven't even spoken about this before, where, if there was somebody else in the house, i.e. somebody maybe working on something in the house or whatever else, and I couldn't go to that place where the drink was, I'd have to somehow manage so I'd have to somehow smuggle the bottle like into someone, because I knew one gulp wouldn't be enough. So once then I'd have to put that somewhere else, and then just that action of doing that, it's not a subtle kind of action. No. It's not a small place. And I do remember I think it was just a few months before I gave up drinking, and my son came home from school and he said to me, Mum, are you going to be drinking tonight? And I got quite defensive because why the fuck are you, I didn't say that to him, but why the fuck dare you impinge on my life? What have I ever done? And I was like, oh, well, I might not keep you in suspense.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
Yeah. You'll find out. You'll soon find out. And so I think that's about the only time. And I think also I used to do the classic thing, which I'm sure you did. Well, I did have a drink last night, but it was only, and then followed by a lie. It was only 3 rums or whatever else. And it wasn't 3 rums. I'd invariably start a bottle of rum, and then you could see how much you'd had.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was only half a bottle. Or...
I mean, we'll move into more positive elements of the interview, I suppose. But I used to find it quite difficult when you would work your way through the whole bottle. And then it's kind of, not in a single go, but over the course of several days. I'd work my way through the bottle, and then all of a sudden the bottle's empty. So it's like, what do you do with the bottle? Do you throw the bottle out, or do you keep the bottle? And because it's like, people might know that the bottle was there.
Yeah.
So that became and this is
every
strange.
Detail
isn't it
about
weird?
It,
because it's like, I don't want to, I don't know what people think about me, but I suspect that this will come as a shock to people listening to this, because I haven't really spoken about this level of detail either. But it's surprising, isn't it? That because on the surface, for example, I had not that I pay a huge amount of attention to you particularly, but I'm very aware of who you are. I had no idea about any of this because obviously you drank in private at home. Publicly, you look to me like you have a lovely life, because I know nothing about
Yeah.
you. So, I just see the nice photos of you and I suspect that's probably what people assume of my life, even when you're sat there with absolutely nothing on during the day and you feel like a complete failure and you're beating yourself up because you feel so ashamed of this awful behavior and you're drinking at 10 a.m. And it's just like, and you're on your own. Everyone else at work. You've got no one to call, nowhere to go. Pubs aren't even open, and you're having your fourth cigarette of the day, and it's just like I feel horrendous, like a real, like I'm not making the most of my life. I am a massive fan of Whoop, and the all-new Whoop experience is here. And it's absolutely better than ever. If you're new to Whoop, it's the only wearable that turns your health and fitness data into personalized guidance to help you perform at your best. The updated hardware is now smaller, lasts 14 plus days on a single charge, and includes powerful new features like health span tracking, heart screener, and improved sleep performance insights. It doesn't just give you numbers. It helps you understand how your body is doing, how you're recovering, and what changes you can make to improve. Whether you're just getting started or deep into your health journey, Whoop is the tool to help you untap your potential. Click the link below for your first month free.
I mean, for me, I think it was a mix of huge amounts of shame, but also it very much became my thing. It was my thing that I had, away from all the horrible, nasty things that were going on in my life. And it was my thing that I could do. Nobody knew about it. Of course, everybody or people around me knew. And I mentioned in the piece, I had my best friend phone me one Saturday morning and she said, I need to speak to you because I spoke to you at 4:00 yesterday afternoon and I couldn't understand a fucking word you said. You have a problem and I can't help you. And I was crying my eyes out because there was just like, there was no way of avoiding it. She says, this comes from a place of love, but you need help. I still didn't stop drinking then. I had to drink on that conversation because that was so shaming. It was awful.
It can go either way, can't it?
Yeah, because I knew she was right, but I wasn't ready, clearly. But even after I had accepted that there was a problem and sought help and started on my sobriety journey, I had 3 people say to me, but you're not an alcoholic. So one person was in the support group that I was attending. And then I had actually even my lovely therapist and then a really close friend said, but you're not. And I said, but you haven't seen me. You haven't seen me.
Yeah, I hide it well.
Yes. And you see my house looking like that. Why would you think that So yeah, there's so many areas around that. Horrible time.
What help do you undergo? Do you still speak to somebody, or are you confident in your own ability to remain sober, or do you go to a group, or how do you do it?
Yeah, no, I rely on a support group, and I probably do about 3 meetings a week. Sometimes I go to one and then I do a couple online. I try not to miss them. And then I'll sometimes do other ones if I miss one. I've been quite sort of literally religious about attending them because at the beginning I felt like if I start to miss one or make excuses for not going to one, I'm going to slip. So I was holding on really tightly. I've got a little bit more confidence now in knowing if I miss that because we have a family event or something like that, it's not. But, Christmas Day, I attended a meeting. Easter Sunday, well, just to get away from people who were drunk and joking and laughing at things that weren't funny. So yeah, I do that, and yeah, I work a program that is teaching me. I mean, the irony of that was I thought, well, it would be enough to go to meetings, just attend, listen to everybody's stories, listen out for the similarities. That'd be fine. There's nothing anyone can teach me about myself that I don't know. Done therapy on and off for 30 years. I know me. I don't need to do this. Turns out I was wrong, and it's really good to be wrong sometimes. So yeah, working, a program and keeping, and we may get into that about what, how life has changed. But yeah, that's really important to me. And for me now, sobriety is my priority, because even though I used to always say, oh, my children are my priority, I realize now that my sobriety is my priority, because without my sobriety, I can't be there for my children, or something awful might happen or whatever else. So
who's your higher power in your recovery? So when you're at meetings, do you believe in God, or do you put somebody else in that position?
So I don't believe in God per se, but will often use the word God for my higher power. And what is my higher power? I think it's a mix of different things, and it's not something that I can see clearly, but that I can feel very clearly. So I don't come from, a religious family or anything like that. In fact, my mum's quite against religion, even though I was christened as a baby. But so religion hasn't really been part of my life. So the idea of God has always been quite foreign to me. And so when I hear the word God, you immediately sort of go like that, until you understand that you have your God. You can create your God, or your higher power can be whatever you want it to be. So I wouldn't be able to tell you specifically what it is, but it is very much there. And yeah, I connect with it as much as possible.
Do you believe in the kind of Alcoholics Anonymous mantra that we are powerless over our actions? I know that you believe alcoholism to be a disease, an incurable disease where, you can either stop drinking or it will remain a problem for the rest of your life. But do you truly believe that you are powerless, or do you believe that you are making these decisions to better your life yourself?
Even the idea that alcohol is a disease or an allergy, I guess in many respects the proof is there, but it's also tricky to get your head around. But it actually, in many respects, doesn't matter as long as I remember that for me well, I don't know, but like if having a glass of wine now is not something that I that I'd want to risk, because it could just be one glass, but I can't guarantee to you that it wouldn't be. And then tomorrow I'll go, well, I did all right on that one glass, so I'll probably be fine. I guess the idea behind that is that we're powerless over alcohol. You seem to me to be a really disciplined person. So the idea of you not being in control, I can imagine being very sort of not an idea that would sit well with you. You like to take responsibility or like to be proactive about your decisions. And I think a lot of the thinking behind what goes on in that particular program is the fact that it's our self-will that we've got to put aside, i.e. the things that we want to do that aren't always, that are there to bloat and fill our egos, sort of thing. So take away that self-will, take away that ego.
Yeah.
So that aspect of things. But yeah, the way that I have interpreted it is that we are powerless over alcohol. But but there's also a side of me that feels very much that, again, because I haven't had like decades of drinking and alcoholism, although alcoholism runs in my family on my mother's side, I haven't had a long history of it or whatever else. So for me, I'm very much a cold turkey kind of person anyway, whatever it might be, whether it has to do with weight or going to the gym, those kind of disciplines. Once I do it, I do it. But I guess for some people, and this is presumably why people relapse when they're drinking, is because they think like, well, I've been sober now for a couple of years, I'm sure, which is why I really struggled around the anniversary of my sobriety, because everyone was like, oh, well done. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get a medal or a trophy and then say, you're cured now, you can go back out there. Yeah. This is the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so it felt like a mixed thing. Like I'd accepted this is the rest of my life. Of course it's an achievement, but equally it's an annoying achievement.
Yeah, it's also something that you're doing to for the betterment of your health.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like you're not going to get all your friends clapping if you go for a run type
No.
thing. And I think it's a similar, you're making a positive decision in your life to live a healthier, better life. But, I see you as a very strong woman who realized and took accountability for certain actions, realized that there was a problem, and is with discipline fixing the problem, and it's going very well for you.
Yeah.
I was always really surprised. I went to a meeting once, and there was a guy who had been completely abstinent of drugs and alcohol for 22 years or something. And he goes to meetings every couple of days and talks about the issue. And I was sat there thinking, but surely you're free of this now.
Yeah,
he was like saying, absolutely not.
Right.
And if I don't go to meetings, I'll do drugs and I'll drink. And I was like, but like, you haven't drank or done drugs in 22 years. I was 24 at the time or something. I was like, for my entire life, you've barely, you haven't touched a thing. And I couldn't understand then why that person couldn't break out of that and be the guy who hasn't touched drink and drugs for 20
be free of that,
and move into a whole new space. It just felt negative. I'm sure he maybe sees it differently.
No,
but to me it felt negative.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because that's, there is an element of me that feels exactly like that. It's not that I feel, oh, that doesn't apply to me, I'm a better drunk than some of those other drunks. That's not how I see it. But for me, or rather for other people, I guess, there is a feeling of connection when they go to meetings, and keeping that connection, that spiritual connection, even with those people or the fellow drunks, and also knowing that fellow drunks understand them and whatever else. And there's a little bit of fear in that if you step away from that, you could end up. But then that's because, I wouldn't be able to do the crazy shit that you've done, like running and getting fit. Like, I mean, when I run, I look like I'm running for help. So, there's just no hope of anything like that. But for you, you have decided to put your mind to something, and you're going to do that. And everybody's mind functions differently. I think that's why I found it so desperately weird that to sort of think of myself as an alcoholic, because I just didn't feel like I was the sort of person who would lose control over an aspect of my life. I've always been the main breadwinner. I've raised the kids, sometimes together with fathers and sometimes on my own and whatever else, but I've always kind of, led the charge. It's always been that. So suddenly to be in this place, and how I got there, I just couldn't quite kind of comprehend that.
This is a particularly difficult question to ask because it's kind of an unknown, but do you believe that you will never drink again?
I believe that I will never drink again. I have to believe that because I do not want to take the risk. Because I think there's every chance that I could have a glass of wine today. But then when the shit hits the fan again, is that going to be my default setting that I go back to that? I mean, at the moment, the way that I feel now, sort of just over a year on, is the very thought of drinking rum or something because something has gone bad just makes me feel sick. I don't want to. But at the beginning, when I'd go out for a Sunday roast or whatever else, and people are sitting there with their glasses of red, I'd be, that would be so nice. That would be so nice. But it's just not. So my belief is that this is forever. But that has, that has changed. I couldn't think like that at the beginning. It was too much to take in. Like at the beginning, you're going 24 hours, 48 hours. I've done a week.
Yeah.
I've done a month. This is amazing. And that's what I think coming up to a year was a bit disappointing, because it's like, oof, this just goes on and bloody on, this sobriety. I can't imagine having a drink again. But and I think if you're a realist and if you're really mindful of, things that have happened before, you have to say, you can never say never. And that's why I think it's important to sort of stay on top of things and
I think there's a certain maturity
Maintenance.
that comes with it as well, where you really know yourself.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's been my journey.
And you know that, we'll just end up in the same place, type thing. So it's kind of, that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting it to be different. It's
result.
obviously not going to be different. Just,
I mean, that's definitely the big thing for me. And again, might be something that we'll talk about. But yeah, just the whole thing of what a massive change it's made for me as a person, as a being. My mindset, my approach has just completely changed. And at nearly 58, I just didn't even think that would be possible. I thought I wasn't very good at life. I wasn't cut out for it. And I was just a pretty average to rubbish person. And then this whole world's kind of opened up to me.
Well, that's really beautiful. Let's
Unless that sounds so
but it's really cool. It is. It's well, if I may say, it's a massive part of why this show exists. Like the going from A to B and the differences, in the kind of person here and here.
Yeah.
It is. Obviously I hope to just have really exciting and interesting conversations with great people. The show's not much more than that, but what it's supposed to be is a reminder that if you are stuck somewhere in life and you feel like you've just described that you're not good enough, that you can't do certain things, that other people are all excelling around you and have beautiful lives that we're looking at on Instagram, you can make significant change to your life. For me, the massive change in my life was changing my relationship with alcohol. That is the single-handedly the biggest shift in me that's ever taken place. Have a beautiful wife now, kids. So obviously a lot of things are different in my life, but that turned me into an entrepreneur, and it gave me drive and ambition and health and wellness, fitness, and the ability to think, well, actually, I can probably, do more exciting and interesting things and push the boundaries more and more, until you look back at your former self and you don't even recognize them. People often ask how I keep the energy up. Being a dad, running 2 businesses, training, hosting Untapped, there is a lot going on. And the truth is, it's not always about doing more. It's about showing up better, more focused, more present. That's where Hydrate by Heights fits in. I've been using it every day, not just after a workout, but in those in-between moments when I'm about to walk into a meeting, prep for an interview, or just need to be switched on for the kids. It's a clean hydration drink with electrolytes and cognizin, a nutrient that supports focus and mental clarity. There's no sugar, no crash. It's just something that helps me feel sharper and more in control. This is the new peach flavor. It's really good. That's very good. That's very good. If you're trying to be more on it in your own day, go to heights.com/untapped and use the code UT20 for 20% off your first order. You'll get all 3 flavors in the starter pack for just £12. Try them today.
Yeah. And I think when we started talking and you said, oh no, we normally talk to elite athletes or, people who have really done amazing things. And I would always sort of look at people like that and go, they are other. They are like made of something completely, which they are in many respects. But I could never see myself as relating to any aspect of that. A very good friend of mine is a former Olympian, and she's, insane about athletics and whatever. Bores me. But, she's very good, and apparently, or was. And, and her discipline is like insane. And she's a couple of years older than me. And it's just, and I'm like, let's have a drink and whatever. And she doesn't drink. She's very, very disciplined. And I just thought, like, you're just made of different shit. Like I could never. And what's happening now for me, and, the joy of this being called Untapped is like suddenly I'm tapping into something. I'm tapping into the person maybe that was there, that I didn't think existed. And also a new person, the person I never knew. I thought I was shit. I thought I was, my opinion of myself was never very high, and not in a sort of, more in a self-deprecating way, but not in a sort of pity party way, but just, I'm like jack of all trades. I did like 7 sports when I was living in Sweden with my dad, and I was pretty below average at all of them, whereas I'd have friends who are really fast runners or excellent at basketball or, and my 2 best friends at school went to Oxford and Cambridge. And, so I was always felt, below. And I don't feel that anymore. And it's come pretty late in life. I mean, I didn't even think I'd get to this age, which I know is mad. But my dad died very suddenly when he was 53. So I just kind of, pensions and all that. It's like, oh, don't worry about that. I'll be dead before then. And always say that to the kids. And they go, Mum, stop saying that. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely not going to be here. So I just kind of had this very negative view of myself, ironically doing a job where everybody sort of, claps their hands and says you're amazing. And you're like, don't believe that shit. And then I'm not going to live very long. So, and now suddenly finding a new desire to live and finding out new things about myself and what I'm capable of and my strengths and whatever. So, yeah.
But isn't it extraordinary that, it almost doesn't matter what stage in your life you're at for this, incredible change to take place from within. It's a really wonderful thing. I was just thinking there of Davina McCall, for example, you know, and her complete transformation in kind of later life. And I have a friend who you almost certainly won't know, but his name is Tucker Hall, and he was he abused drugs and alcohol on a daily basis for his whole life, from when he was a surfing teenager in Hawaii all the way through to founding Volcom. It's a snowboarding brand. Huge, massive thing.
Massive.
Wasn't massive when he founded it, but it certainly was on its way. It's incredibly cool. He got paid out by them many, many tens of millions to step away from the brand, right? He took that money, went and just like abused drugs, abused alcohol. And then one day, but by the way, he was an incredibly gifted, awesome music playing, tattooed guy who's just like, his aura was just...
You wanted to be around him.
He's amazing. Right. Like even when he was high, and that's pretty rare, by the way. Most people who are drunk and high are just nightmares. He was always just like super interesting, super entertaining, just like incredible person, him and his wife, both of them the same. And one day he just stopped, sold the house, moved to Idaho, built a big log cabin, hosted the AA meetings, been sober for many years now. We catch up semi-regularly, just because we're very close. But, he felt what you're talking about, this later in life, just complete, total transformation. He would have felt that his life was very beautiful before, but actually he now describes it as this kind of like inferno that he was in, never sleeping properly, constantly high, chasing the next line, chasing the next drink, in the comfort of his multi-million quid mansion, but still trapped, trapped, and kind of slave to it all.
Running on empty as well. That's the thing, is that you're kind of, I guess, burning up inside, and you're burning up all the good energy as well and all the positive stuff, because you're just sort of wasting yourself quite literally. I think for women as well, I mean, I was just like menopausal, coming into this stage of life where, society likes to forget about you and you should go into old age gracefully and, whatever else. I'm like, fuck that. That is not happening. Like, I still want to have a lot of sex and I want to have a lot of fun. The kids can wipe their own asses now, so I can be free to do my own thing. So there was this sort of thing of like, everybody's sort of expecting you to disappear from view. And suddenly this wonderful thing starts to happen to me. I mean, I thought, like I did sort of think I would be dead by now, not from the drinking, but just somehow, because my dad died young. I just had it in my head that I'd also have a brain hemorrhage really early and I'd be gone. And so old age wasn't really something I needed to worry about. But here I am. And now sort of wanting to catch up on the years of negative thinking that I lost, of sort of negative being, negative view of myself or approach. I was also really fucking angry when I was drinking. I was angry about everything. I was angry about what was happening to me, what someone was trying to do in terms of what was going on in my life that I was trying to find a solution to. And then, like you say, you look at other people's lives and you're like, fuck you, you with your fucking perfect life, and fuck you and this and fuck my life. Like, and instead now, and I know I sound like an absolute wanker saying this, but I start the morning with a gratitude list and it changes the whole face of everything.
That's really interesting. We had a guest talk about that before as well. So how do you do that? You physically write stuff down?
Yeah, in fact, and I actually send it to a person who I know, not like a complete stranger.
Just DM
some
it to a
random on
randomer.
Instagram. Grateful for the painter being turning
time
up on
today.
time. It can be. I mean, sometimes you're like, but then you always find something, and then you're like, and having done that, you're just like, you know what? Whereas before, I might have started the day going, oh my God, look at the bloody brush dropped on the floor and everything's fine. Instead now, look, I'm not irritatingly positive about everything, and life hasn't stopped throwing me like curveballs and difficult things to deal with. But it's up to me. What I didn't realize was that I had the power to obviously change my attitude to whatever's happening, or change how I treat the situation, how I behave in the situation.
You've talked about something called emotional sobriety. So it's not just stopping drinking, but it's learning to live differently.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on it?
I guess it goes back to the fact that I thought that I would be able to just give up drinking. And that goes back to what you were saying about having that self-will. And I think there's an element of that. I could definitely stop drinking. But would I be able to keep off that without learning about myself, like cleansing myself emotionally? And I think, speaking as somebody who's had therapy on and off through periods of my life, or whatever, since for 30 odd years or whatever, I just thought there's nothing that I can learn about myself. I'm very aware. I question everything I do. I question my behavior, all that stuff. There's nothing that I can learn from anything. But then, attending support groups where emotional sobriety is kind of the order of the day, and learning about why I'm doing things, and that even I have an ego. I was like, no, not little on me. I just don't ever put myself first, or I don't manipulate or whatever else. And it's like, ooh, yeah, maybe those things have happened. And I think that in tandem with giving up the drink has been crucial for me, because if I just gave up the drink and then carried on the same way, because my behavior has changed so much. I've found, oh my God, here comes another wanky expression. But I've found this inner peace.
I don't think it's wanky, by the way. I think it's really important for people to understand that alcohol can be having a really negative effect on their life. Like that, I used to be really careful with the way I would say that. I used to say kind of, alcohol's fine and everyone should have a moderate relationship with alcohol, and as long as you're not abusing alcohol, that's fine. And all of that is true. But I think people are aware now, more so than ever, that alcohol, is toxic. It is a problem. It is the kind of origin of lots of crime, of lots of health issues.
Oh my gosh.
The burden on the NHS is simply enormous, because of alcohol. And we're really just talking about it from a personal level, not even on a macroeconomic level or a societal level. But it's kind of, it is interesting, I think, for people just to understand, the difference that it can make to their life. And you finding inner peace, I think, is a wonderful example of, why people should drink less.
Because I didn't sort of go public about giving up drinking till I turned my 6th month. I didn't tell anyone, only just sort of close people. And when I would tell them or whatever else, whoever else I might have called me, I'd never force it down their throat or anything like that. But they'd always go, oh yeah, maybe I should give up drinking. And I was like, no, you probably don't need to give up drinking just because you hear it from me and you know. But it is everywhere. It's so I see it more and more now. Every time you walk into the supermarket, it's everywhere. We're expected to drink. We're expected to drink to have a good time. That was my fear. I was like, I'm not going to be funny when I'm not drinking.
Did you think it would have a negative effect on your sex life?
Yeah, although I kind of knew that sex sober would be better. But of course, all your inhibitions go when you've had a drink. So sex becomes easier to sort of facilitate or bring about or participate in. But the enjoyment side of things is very different when you're sober. So that's been quite interesting too. I mean, yeah.
Because you spoke about it having an impact, at least, on your approach to dating.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Because I would never have had a date without having one drink. That's the lubricant, isn't it? That's the sort of social lubricant you just need to sort of ease yourself into a date. But obviously, if I was driving somewhere or whatever else, then I wouldn't drink more than that. But yeah, often, if that wasn't an issue, 2 or 3 drinks somewhere else, and you just become a little bit more available, I guess. I mean, it is easier, and maybe you even feels hornier and sexier. I don't know. I mean, that is something that I still, because like if you could do a taste test today and go, like, do a drink and then try this, and then do it the same without having a drink, but then not having a drink and going on a date is like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
it's really hard because people are not as attractive.
Like, I really thought you were about to say, like, it's hard to open up, or it's like people look worse. Yeah, like, okay.
I can really see you.
Yeah. No, I'm not at all, I can see you for who you really are, and I don't like it. So at the end of each episode, we always ask our guests for an actionable tip on how to untap more of their own potential. I mean, in your particular case, what I'd love to hear is, having made this very positive change in your life, you're over a year in, like, we know what you have done. How does it feel to have made that change? And I suppose, what tip would you give somebody who is thinking to make a change like that in their life?
Well, first of all, it feels miraculous. It does feel like I sometimes walk around going, I don't know myself, or I didn't know myself, or whatever else. I guess the thing that I feel very much is that I never, ever in a million years thought that I would be capable of making a big shift and a big change, not just dropping the alcohol, but mindset and approach to life. I was always the person who would sort of poo-poo all those people who tell you to manifest things and motivation and whatever else. I was like, no, I'm going to go and have a fag instead, or something like that, rather. Don't smoke, kids. But, I genuinely believe this. And this is, if somebody like myself, and that's regardless of, background or profession or anything like that, but just somebody who actually people out there don't know me and how maybe little I thought of myself or whatever else. But if somebody like me can make a shift and make a change, and can also do it in the autumn of my life, then it really is possible. I know it's a jokey thing and applying it to myself, but you can teach old dogs new tricks. And I just would never have believed it. I thought I was set on a course for life, and I think you get entrenched in that. So I know it's not a very catchy kind of guide to give to somebody.
Great.
But if I can do it, I promise whoever, like however shit things are, I think it is possible. I don't want to say, oh, there's hope out there and everyone, blah, blah, blah. But if I'm capable, then you are too. Well, not you, but you.
No,
you're not capable.
I'm a lost cause. Ulrika, thanks so much for joining us. That was a real pleasure, and everything I hoped it might be. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you want to hear more incredible conversations with extraordinary people to help unlock the potential within all of us, then please subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you're listening or watching. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week right here on Untapped.